Alrighty, everyone. I hope you're doing well today. Today, we're going to be covering the different levels of finance and really the kind of question of are there different levels? So, first of all, I'm going to say that absolutely there are different levels of finance. I truly believe that um, uh, finances is not something that people are just innately born understanding. I find it very, very comical that in people's vocation and their jobs and their careers, that it's perfectly understandable that people start at a basic, level, go to the journeyman, become, an expert in their field over their lifetime. I find it quite comical that people think that finances should be any different than that, right? A lot of people think that people have to be masters, have finance. And so here's kind of where I think a lot of people end up kind of in three main categories. Okay. So the first category that we're going to talk about is kind of the I'm going to call them unaware, and I'm not going to call them unaware in a negative sense. Just they're unaware that the problem exists. They're unaware that there's solutions out there. They succumb to a lot of the advertising that companies put out there, and they have a hard time. So have a hard time investing, saving, time investing and saving. And so, really, when you start looking at how to solve this unaware section, you're almost entirely going to be battling it from a behavioral perspective, right? And so, you are not going to worry about maximizing every dollar. You're not going to worry about minimizing returns. You are just going to get people to do things. So, I recently released a video about Dave Ramsey and how I think that his investing advice is good. There's asterisks to that. Go watch the video to see why I say that. And that you just need to get people doing things. So, work with an advisor, start investing, start putting money aside, start doing the things that you need to do in order to get where you ultimately want to go. Right. Um, Getting things started is really where um, uh, you'll start building the habits. So then the next kind of segment of you are now aware. Now you're trying to I'm going to call it uh, mainstream maximizing. Um, Maximizing. Now, what I mean by this is you are going to be trying to maximize uh, uh, gains, and you're going to be minimizing, oh man, I can't write, minimizing fees. You're going to be looking at tax implications. You're going to be looking at, focusing on interest rates. So interest rate focus. You're going to be doing all of these things in the mainstream finance. And so this is where you'd be looking at ETFs versus mutual funds. This is where you're going to start diving into the active versus passive role, active versus passive investing. This is where you're going to be looking at whether or not you you know invest versus paying uh, mortgage off first, all of that type of stuff, right? A lot of the stuff that you would look at inside of this mainstream maximizing area, you wouldn't worry about in the unaware category. In the unaware category, you would just go into a mutual fund, not because it's the most optimal, but because it makes the most sense and people are familiar with the term. You would probably look at an active plan because it sounds really cool and sexy to say that someone's going to really make sure that you don't lose money when the market's going down, and when the market's going up they're going to make sure that they maximize the returns, right? Although studies would show that that's very, very difficult, right? But that sounds sexy, and so somebody that's unaware of all the data surrounding it is going to like that over passive saying the market's just going to do what the market does, right? So this is where I would say that unaware is probably 60 to 70% of people, right? I would say that the mainstream side of things, you're talking, I would say 30, I would say 20. I'm trying to make my math here. You know what? It doesn't really matter. My math doesn't have to make sense. Okay. I would say the mainstream is 20 to 30%. And really, once you start going past this, you start going into what I am going to call efficient efficient planners. Let's just put it that way, right? I'm making these things up. I should also add, I haven't pre-planned this. This is really just off the cuff of my head. Okay. So, yeah, this is where people start realizing, wait a second, I can start using the bank against them. And so I'm going to put down some terms here, but it's not necessarily this. This is where you start looking at velocity banking. Okay. This is where things like the infinite banking concept, IBC, start to look really attractive, where you can start wondering, okay, how do the banks run their lives, and how can I use the same type of tactics in order to enhance my life? This is where cash flow really starts to matter. Um, and you're also going to be looking at uh, control. Really is how it ends up happening. Now, you're not going to forget any of this information here. It's not like you're above the mainstream maximizing. Don't get me wrong, but you're not going to care as much about, for example, maximizing the gains, because maximizing gains may be at the expense of control, and control is what gives you choice, and ultimately choice allows you to do things, right? So kind of this is what I see as the different levels of finance, and it takes people sometimes a lifetime to kind of move themselves from one section to another, and some don't ever leave the section. You look at the kind of the unaware section. This behavioral component, I know it's one word, but it is, I would say, 99% of the battle moving forward and up into these different categories. Somebody that gets to the mainstream maximizing will live a very, very good life. Do not get me wrong. And people that are in the efficient planners, well, sometimes, quite honestly, they're going to do more harm than good because they think they've outsmarted the system. Regardless, I hope this makes sense. Let me know if you agree with me. If you agree with me, thumbs up the video. If you disagree, put the thumbs down. It's all good. It's okay. Let's have a conversation about this. I do a lot of these videos, the overwhelming majority of them actually. Simply sit down, hit record, start talking. I don't pre-plan them. So I don't pretend to know absolutely everything about everything. So let me know. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next video. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already, if you like this type of topics. Cheers.